Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to Basketball Conference, the ACC football podcast. My name's Joey Weaver. He is Mike McDaniel. Mike, first question, who's your favorite guest to bring on this podcast?
The next one. That's always my answer. I am very excited, Joey, to bring on Dan Rubin.
Damn, I thought it was Cam Underwood.
Yeah, it was. Oh, no. Dan Rubin of PCEagles.com, Eagles Unlimited. Dan, your Boston College Eagles are ranked, hosting game day, and welcoming War Machine Clemson to Chestnut Hill.
Does it get any better than that? And 1 week after we just paraded duck boats down the street with the Boston Red Sox. The Red Sox have made an appearance at every major sporting event in the city of Boston with the trophy. I don't know if they're going to show up on Saturday, but I sure hope they do.
I don't know what you're talking about. Dan, welcome back. It's good to have you on. We had you on about a month and a half ago. Obviously felt like this was the right time to bring you back on here. Huge marquee matchup. Your number 22 Boston College Eagles at home, welcoming in the number 2 Clemson Tigers. They're a 20-point road favorite in this game, by the way. And so wanted to profile this game a little bit and talk about kind of what Boston College has been up to the last 6 weeks or so. I think there was a point where people started to get skeptical of, was this going to turn out as the season we thought it was going to for Boston College, but they've since then kind of kicked it back into gear and really been pretty clearly one of the 2 or 3 best teams in the ACC, I think we would say. Before we kind of dive into the game, there's a couple things I'm curious to hear about. First of all, if I'm not mistaken, this game is the red bandana game. Is that correct?
That was 2 weeks ago. So that was the Miami game on Friday night. It was designated it was a preseason designation for the red bandana game. Okay. This one is just off the charts, monumentally important. But no, they played the red bandana game against Miami on Friday night before Halloween.
Okay, yeah, that was going to be one of my questions, because my first question is basically, what is the red bandana game? The second question is, didn't we already do that 2 weeks ago, and how is this different? But it sounds like we already did that, so I guess that answers the second question. So back to the first one, what is the red bandana game?
So the red bandana game is based off of a story that was produced originally by Tom Rinaldi, which means that if you go and watch it, make sure that you have a box of tissues readily available, because Tom Rinaldi is the sweetest, greatest human being on the face of the planet. On 9/11, when the planes hit the Twin Towers, there was a young man that was working high in one of the towers. I want to say the second one that was hit. His name was Wells Crowther. Wells was a commodities trader who always had aspired to be a fireman. And as the story would go, Wells made his way down to a lobby that was on fire, helped save a bunch of people going down the stairs. And then as the people were running down the stairs to get out, Wells turned around and ran back. And he went back up and saved about a dozen people. The red bandana was something that he had around his face to block from the smoke. And he had always kept a red bandana in his pocket, which was a gift from his dad at a young age. He played lacrosse at Boston College before they dropped the program. And everybody knew Wells Crowther by his red bandana. So when the story came out months later from one of the women who was saved, and the Crowther family hadn't heard from Wells, they didn't have any news. The woman said this gentleman had a red bandana, and his mom was like, "Oh my God, we found him." So the red bandana game is a way for BC to honor him and honor that memory and honor his sacrifice, which is pretty much, they pick one of the biggest games. Now, obviously, it's not around September 11th. They played it in October, but they use a game that they know is preordained to be on national TV, the Friday night national TV game against a big-time opponent like a Miami. They did it against Florida State. They did it against USC when they hosted USC. So it's always has maximum exposure so that they can get Wells's name and the message and the sacrifice out, as opposed to they're not using it. Let's put it, they're using the game to honor Wells as opposed to, doing it around September 11th and playing it out against a team like Holy Cross, which, while that's a good rivalry between an FCS team, it's not the same as playing it, Miami under the lights.
That's super cool.
Yeah. And it's I have friends who work at ESPN, and that is probably one of the documentaries that they are most proud of. It's like 13 or 14 minutes long. It's narrated by Eddie Burns, and it's amazing. It's incredible. It's awesome.
That is really powerful. That's a cool story. I had no idea. I heard all this stuff about the red bandana game when they were playing Miami a couple weeks ago, and I was like, I mean, they got some cool patterns on the numbers and on the helmets and stuff, but I didn't really know kind of what the origin of that was. That's awesome. I appreciate you telling that. Dan, I guess the other question I had was talking about kind of College Game Day. This is coming to Chestnut Hill, right? Coming to this Boston College campus for the first time. I think we said since 2009.
Yep.
I don't know what the chatter around the program, around the fan base has been, but I'm expecting a pretty raucous turnout given how long it's been.
Yeah, I mean, I said it. I'm just pulling up the schedule from that year. So this is probably the biggest game in modern college football BC history since the ACC switch, and probably at home. I'll preface it by saying at home. There have been some lean years. There've been some disappointing results, and there's no way to run from it. I don't think anybody wants to. But to earn game day this late in the season, and you guys both know this with Georgia Tech and Virginia Tech, you have to be doing something pretty special, and you have to have people believe in you that you are capable of doing something special. So you go back to that game back in 09 and 05. It was both earlier in the season. They've hosted twice, both against Florida State. The first time was the first game in the ACC. It was earlier in the year. Granted, they were ranked. Florida State was a top 5 team, but you're going back into like a September, October type game. The last time they hosted back in 09, it was October 3rd of that year against Florida State, and they used it as a jump-off point to honor Mark Herzlich. So BC was 3-1, finished the year 8-5. They were unranked. Florida State was unranked at that point and were, I think, 2-2, coming off a loss that knocked them out of the rankings. So it was, and I actually just pulled it up, so I'm not going to say I think. I just looked. But it was a game that was designed around honoring Mark Herzlich, and who had announced, I think, in the spring that he had been diagnosed with Ewing sarcoma. What made that game so special wasn't even necessarily the game. BC won at 28-21. It was a very good game, but it was that Herzlich on national television on game day, sitting in between Chris Fowler and Lee Corso, announced to the world that he was cancer-free. I remember I was watching that at home because I didn't go in that day, and it was like everyone in the room just done, crying. You were watching the special of him in the documentary. Thanks a lot, Tom Rinaldi. And you were crying and sobbing, and then he announces he's cancer-free. He gets on a microphone before the game, introduces the team, crowd goes bananas, and it was off to the races. This game's just different from that. And I'm not going to try to take away from anything, especially me, with the fact that it was October. It was cancer awareness. He announced he was cancer-free. Earlier that year, my mom had beaten cancer for what I think was the 4th time in her life at that point. There's nothing to take away from that particular game back in 09. But you're hosting in November. If you win, you have the inside track to the ACC championship. There are college football playoff implications. Everybody is going to be watching this game on a Saturday night at 8 p.m. Everybody who once thought Boston College, and they're looking and they're saying, well, we heard they were kind of good, but maybe we'll turn this in and believe, see what they can do when they're playing Clemson, who is just steamrolling teams at this point. So everybody seems to think that this is Clemson's real last challenge with Duke and South Carolina. Everyone seems to think this is a game that BC just presents the wrong matchup. So I think it's going to be it's brought this whole thing into a whole other stratosphere. And I think everyone's going to be surprised at the type of atmosphere that comes out of Boston. I said it today, 11 pro championships in 18 years. And it's going to be a college football town on Saturday.
It looks to be a really interesting game, Dan. And again, we appreciate you kind of coming on and joining us. Let's talk more specifically about the game itself. And Mike, as we look at this, we've talked for weeks now about Clemson being in just absolute war machine mode, right? And they stop for nobody, and they're just whipping ass and taking names and not asking questions. And all that said, Clemson a 20-point favorite in this game. I don't know about you, but I'm a little more hesitant to lay this many points in a game. At the very least, where I know that there is going to be a crazy crowd atmosphere on the road, blah, 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 blah. Not to mention Boston College, subtly, if Boston College wins this game, they control their own destiny in the ACC. That would leave them at 5-1, Clemson at 6-1, and they would have the tiebreaker.
They would. Dan, question. What's the status of A.J. Dillon? I don't know if you're allowed to comment on that, given your position. Like, do you know, like, at least what are people saying the status of A.J. Dillon is for Saturday? Like,
nobody knows. And I actually know that Steve Adazio addressed it in his press conference this week. But he said he was asked if he could update, and he said no. And he was, according to Adazio, I'm just going to redirect what he said. He said, I saw him yesterday and was bouncing around, good smile on his face. It's dinged up. He's dinged up. It is what it is. He said it's not going to significantly change one way or another. The question becomes how well he can handle it. But I would assume with these kind of injuries, you're not going to feel exactly the way you should feel until you get to a bowl game and have a few weeks. Certainly a fair question. If it does feel good enough by game time to play, we'll have to see each day with that. So I think, not reading too much into what Adazio's saying there, I think it's all hands on deck. If he can play, he's going to play and see how well he can manage the pain. But at the same time, it's the second ankle injury of the year. And I'd like to thank the cameraman that he ran into that caused this one. Really appreciate that, guys. But I think if he plays, it's going to be pain management. If he doesn't, it's because it's a significant injury because it's a tissue ankle or whatever it is. So I think we're not going to know until Saturday. And by the same token, I don't know that I'd want to come out on the Monday before the game and tell Clemson, yeah, sure, he's going to play.
Right,
I'd hold on to that one as long as I have to.
Right. So I'm going to go off the assumption he's not going to be 100%, which I think is a pretty safe bet. It comes down to this for me. By the way, we didn't address this off the top. I am dying. Like, I have some sort of like sinus flu thing. So excuse my lack of a voice and the constant need to cough.
Mike, you're showing some pretty solid grit right now. I'm really impressed.
Hashtag grit. More grit than A.J. Dillon?
Hard nosed. Yeah, hard nosed. Gym rat.
Just a football guy.
Yeah.
Which is fun, the whole thing.
Yeah. First one in, last one out.
Yeah.
Eats, sleeps, and breathes football. They go on and on. So I'm going to go off the assumption A.J. Dillon's not 100% healthy. The question to me is, despite the atmosphere, and it's going to be loud in Chestnut Hill, when BC is good and they get a primetime game, it is quite loud there. It's going to be loud, and Clemson's got to be ready to embrace the atmosphere, right? And that's something that they do quite well. Boston College's rushing attack is going to have to get them by here, because while Anthony Brown is an underrated quarterback in the ACC, I'm not sure that anybody, let alone Anthony Brown, is going to be able to throw the ball 40 times and expect to have success against Clemson, especially when you lean on the run. So if A.J. Dillon's not 100%, while Boston College has a couple other running backs that are pretty good, A.J. Dillon's the guy, right? And if he's out or at less than 100%, I really question Boston College's ability to move the football over 4 quarters enough to win this football game. Can they keep it within 3 scores? That's the other question. And that's completely dependent on how healthy A.J. Dillon is, guys. Seriously. Look, if he plays, I think he'll get his. I think he's too good, despite everything we know about Clemson's defensive front. So I'm going to take Clemson to win and cover. I think BC will hang around for a while. And by hang around, I think they'll be within 2 touchdowns and have it be interesting. They'll be getting stops on defense. I just don't know if they have enough offense in this game to keep up with Clemson, which, by the way, right now, like, this is not an indictment on BC if Clemson wins this game by like 4 or 5 touchdowns. This is not, to me, an indictment on what BC is as a program at this present moment. I do think BC is one of the best teams in a down ACC, but despite that, like, BC is a good football team. Clemson is doing this to whoever they play right now. So I got Clemson to win and cover. I think it'll be of a backdoor variety. I think they'll score a late touchdown to get over the 20. But I'm confident enough in their offense right now that I think they can take that offense and score literally in whatever situation presents itself.
Part of my thought here, Mike, and sorry, Dan, sorry to cut you off here. Part of my thought here, and you mentioned A.J. Dillon's health, and part of the reason that is so important to me, at least in terms of talking about the spread, is if Boston College has a healthy A.J. Dillon and is effectively running the ball, if nothing else, they're going to have the ability to limit possessions in the game, and you can kind of limit the separation that Clemson would ever get. And so I think that's something that you have to consider is, as well as Boston College has run the ball and can chew up the clock and can kind of slow down the game and make you play at their pace. I think that's something that you have to consider with a spread that is as big as this one is.
Yeah, and I mean that was going to be kind of my point, was the ability to control the clock, and I think that is going to be the key for the Eagles in general, in terms of how they go about winning this game. I don't think, and I said this to and I'm just pulling up again last year's box score. I come back to I did an interview earlier with a radio show down in Clemson, and I said there's no way, and I can't think of a single person under any circumstances who would agree or who would disagree with me on this. There is no way under any circumstances you can get in a track meet and beat Clemson. You just can't do it. They're too good, and not only are they too good, but they're too fast. They're not going to grind you out. If you try to get into a track meet with them and you try to play a chess match pound for pound with them, you're asking to get throttled. I mean, you're asking for it. So you have to muddy the game down according to the conditions that are there. Last year's game is a great example of that, because last year BC hung with Clemson. They stayed tied into the fourth quarter, 7-7. It was a really slop game, for lack of a better word, because BC decided they were going to run the clock, own the clock, control the clock, and limit Clemson. So in the first quarter, completely scoreless, BC owns the clock for 8 minutes. Clemson only held it for 6. BC held it for 7:37 in the third quarter. The 2 quarters that came back to haunt BC, where they were outscored 34-0, were the second quarter and the fourth, when Clemson held the ball for 10.5 minutes in each frame. At the same time, Clemson only scored 27 points in the fourth quarter. And I say only scored because they scored 3 touchdowns in the last 5 minutes. At a point when BC's defense absorbed an injury to the linebacking coach, I think it was to Max Richardson. So they had to put in an untested rookie, John Lamont, who was a freshman or playing his first snaps, and they couldn't compete at that point. So they wound up giving the ball back too quickly, and next thing you know, Clemson owns the clock, runs it up, and you lose by 27 points. So I think the key on Saturday is going to be the same, which is if you keep Travis Lawrence off the field and you keep Travis Etienne off the field, they can't score. Whether or not that depends on Dillon, you can mix in some other things in there. They have done it. Let's put it that way. I go back to when Dillon was out. You've got different change of pace backs and different ways to execute, which is a lot harder to do against Clemson's defense, especially with their defensive line. Like Christian Wilkins is on one side, and on the other side, I can't remember the guy's name, but he's a monster. You're looking at, if you need to run between the tackles, you need to play smarter and you need to control the clock, drag it into the fourth quarter. And if you can do that, you're just going to convert your opportunities. Everybody makes a mistake in a football game. Nobody, even a 77-point game, somebody's going to make a mistake offensively. Well, you have to wait for that one mistake and capitalize on it. You have to execute a perfect game plan, and you have to execute it perfectly.
Completely agree. Dan, the thing that you mentioned about Boston College needing to avoid getting into a track meet, it brings to mind the quote from Coach Carter about how we make other teams play our game, and you're going out there playing theirs. Boston College cannot go out there and try to win a game by scoring 30 or more points against Clemson. They're just not. That's not going to happen, right? They're not built for that. They're strategically not going to do that. They can score points against teams, sure, but against this Clemson team and kind of how they match up, they cannot plan on trying to win a game like 45-42, right? That's just not – it's not a feasible outcome for the Eagles, in my mind.
If that does happen, I go back to the USC game, which I think was 34-31 with Tyler Murphy, and they ran for 500-something yards. If you are capable of doing that, then something went horribly wrong for Clemson, and you found the kryptonite. I don't think strictly on paper you can objectively look at a game plan and say, yeah, BC's still going to run tempo. They're still going to run an up-tempo style. But remember, the tempo means 1, 2, 3, 4. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean 1, go. It's not like in basketball when you're shooting in 6 seconds. You can run up-tempo and work the clock and get into your rhythm and prevent substitutions. So I think you can do that and get set and get ready and run a couple of quick snaps or a couple of quick plays. But you cannot go warp speed against this team because you're in danger of giving them the ball back too quickly. And that is, if you do that, you're asking for problems.
Absolutely. Dan, you're not really allowed to give a pick on this game as it would happen. I'm going to go ahead and give mine. I'm with Mike. I'm just going to lay the 20 with Clemson. We've kind of talked again about Clemson minus anything. This is the one that I would really hesitate to put my own money on. You could give me double the number with most other teams in the ACC, and I would probably lay it at this point. But in this game with this number in this setting, I don't feel comfortable putting my own money on it. But for the sake of picks on this podcast, give me Clemson minus 20, and I think they win fairly comfortably. Maybe a 38-14 kind of thing sounds kind of right, but. That would kind of get him to the cover, but it would also be a lower scoring version of that game. And I could see this going under the total of 58 here, Mike.
I could see the under. I got Clemson minus 20 as well. Yeah, I'll end there before I start coughing.
Well, Dan, appreciate you coming on. Would love to have you, as always, kind of stick around here and preview the rest of these games if you're interested and you got the time.
Hey, if it's a chance for me to talk football, I'm probably going to do it. So let's be honest there. My wife's going to have to drag me out the door to have that not happen.
Good.
She's got me on vacation for a week, so she doesn't have to work. So she'll let me.
Good. Well, plus the team needs him tonight, Joey.
Well, and at the very least, we would get him on camera doing that. So that would be an extra bonus here if you're watching the YouTube version of this. Let's move on, gentlemen, to actually move back to Thursday night. 7:30 p.m. on ESPN, the Wake Forest Demon Deacons without Sam Hartman on the road in Raleigh against the number 21 NC State Wolfpack. Wolfpack a 17-point favorite here at home. They got back on track last week against Florida State. Once again, Wake Forest lost their quarterback for the year. Home game Thursday night. I'm not sure how Wake is going to be scoring points or stopping points at this point. I think I am just straight up on NC State minus the 17.
I'm on NC State. They have a new quarterback, and we don't know who that's going to be yet. And
they being Wake Forest.
And NC State has, Ryan Finley. That should be enough. Plus, they're at home. Just don't see the path for Wake here. I got NC State winning and probably covering that 17. Even though it's a pretty big number for a weeknight, I do like NC State's chances there.
Every time,
thoughts on the Atlantic Division.
Every time Ryan Finley grabs the football, I ask that the Patriots somehow can find a way to draft him and make him the heir to Brady. That's all I want.
I will turn this car around and we will go home, Dan. We're not talking about the damn Patriots right now. We're not doing it.
He's fantastic. I love Ryan. Ryan Finley might be my favorite ACC quarterback. No offense to Anthony Brown. He's so good.
He's really good.
No offense to the quarterback of my employer.
Hey, if you asked Anthony Brown, he'd probably say, yeah, Ryan Finley's a really good, probably the best quarterback in the ACC.
I don't think anybody's afraid to admit that. Yeah, Ryan Finley, he's real good. Real good. Yeah, NC State minus 17 is the pick there. We'll keep that one quick and short. Friday night, this one might also be kind of quick and short. 7 o'clock, ESPN2, the Deuce. We got the Louisville Cardinals on the road at the number 19 Syracuse Orange in the Carrier Dome. Orange, a 21-point favorite. Total here is a nice 69 points.
Nice.
This is a lot of points, and yet I don't really know how – I mean, this is one of those, honestly, where Louisville's best strategy might be to try to make this a track meet just so they can cover. They're not going to win this game, but you could find a way to backdoor your way into like a 17-point margin to cover somehow. Louisville's like 1-8 against the spread, so we're probably trying too hard at this point.
They're 1-8 against the spread. They have Jawan can't pass and a really bad defense. So Syracuse minus anything. Don't care that it's a look-ahead game with Notre Dame and Yankee Stadium a week from Saturday. Literally don't care. Louisville's atrocious. They never cover. And, yeah, I trust Syracuse, which is a scary thing for me to mutter. But I do.
I have this image in my head of BC and Syracuse both winning out and then meeting in the last week of the season with somehow managing to put the Atlantic Division title on the line. And somehow I run into Diamond Ferry somewhere along the streets of Everett, Mass. And I immediately go to the Tobin Bridge and threaten to jump. But I think I love Syracuse, and I'm not just saying that because Louisville's having a tough year. But if you get into a track meet, and I think that's probably the worst thing you can do with Dino Babers' offense.
I mean, is it the worst thing you can do with their Brian Van Gorder defense?
I mean, probably not great.
I saw an article today, by the way, about him. You know, we talk about Bobby Petrino's buyout being pretty big. Brian Van Gorder's buyout isn't cheap either.
And, you know, at some point, too, I remember I was looking at the Louisville team a couple of weeks ago, and you kind of hang your hat on the fact that they're all young. I mean, these are young guys, and I know everyone expects more out of Louisville, and especially with their talent level and their recruiting rankings and the fact that they've really been good for a while now. But some of these guys are really young. I mean, when you're playing a lot of those freshmen and sophomores, you're going to take it on the chin, and it goes on both sides of the ball. So, you know, I would hesitate to say that this is going to be the norm for them, but I mean, we've all been there. 3-9 2015 season is now yielding game day against Clemson, and I know that, you know, everyone's been down that road. I know Georgia Tech went down that road, and then managed to build back. So I don't write off Louisville, the coaches, the roster. They're just in the midst of a growing year, and there's something about them that's going to scare me for a while.
That makes one of us, because I point taken with the players, but Bobby Petrino and Van Gorder, I feel like they owe the university money, right? Like, they need to start a GoFundMe and start giving the university money back. That defense I just watched, now granted it was against Clemson, but that defense I just watched last Saturday was one of the worst performances I've ever seen. Granted, it was against War Machine Clemson, so you give them like a 30-point pass. But other than that, even so, you would still lose that game by 30 points, 37 points, actually. Math is hard. So even with a 40-point buffer, you still lose that game by 5 touchdowns. Anytime you give up 11 touchdowns, I am blaming the coaches.
It's becoming so apparent. Like, that was a game last week, by the way, that like everybody's starting to see it for themselves that Louisville's defense is quitting. Like, at that point, there's no real coming back from that. Yeah, Syracuse minus 21. I think that's the pick. Just lay the points in the Carrier Dome and don't think twice about it. Let's move on to Saturday, guys. We already talked about the 8 o'clock game on ABC. And one of the things I thought was kind of weird is you look at the slate, and there are 6 ACC games on Saturday. Only one of them in the noon slot. That's kind of interesting. We'll get to that one here in a minute. That's going to be North Carolina at Duke. But for now, 3:30 p.m. on ESPNU. Mike, your Virginia Tech Hokies on the road at Heinz Field taking on the Pitt Panthers. The Panthers a 3-point home favorite, basically saying these two teams are equal, if not for home field advantage. Mike, we talked about, in the preseason, basically, that Virginia Tech, what have they ever won at Heinz Field? It's pretty much a total house of horrors for the Hokies.
Once, and that was 2 years ago. Yeah, once, and that was 2 years ago on Thursday Night Football. I got Pitt here. You guys,
covering the 3?
Yeah, you guys know how I feel about Virginia Tech right now. I got Pitt.
Yeah, it's not great.
Out of curiosity, is Heinz Field still grass? It's not turf, right?
Not turf, still grass. It could be cardboard, and I think Virginia Tech still loses this game. So that's where I'm at.
I mean, I was going to say it kind of depends on how you define grass, because I've seen the videos of like the punt sticking in the ground and stuff. I mean, I feel like maybe I have a much worse image in my mind of Heinz Field's grass quality than is actually the case, but I cannot get over that at all.
The only reason why I ask is because I remember there was a time, a long time ago, it might have been 2006. Gillette Stadium was grass and it was spray painted dirt, and the NFL pretty much made the Patriots install AstroTurf or replace the field over like in the bye week. So then I remember looking at Pittsburgh and seeing spray painted dirt. So that's why I asked, because it's getting cold up here. So if that's going to be a weather thing, and then that field is going to be, you're asking for it. That field's going to be tough.
I believe the Texans replaced their grass with turf mid-season a few years ago because their grass was of such questionable quality. And they're in a dome, but it was like the grass that could retract out of the stadium and grow outside and that whole thing. The grass was of such questionable quality that all these players kept getting like knee and ankle injuries from feet and stuff getting caught in the grass, just trying to run around and stuff. I mean, it was legitimately dangerous, and they had to replace it. So go ACC to that. I'm gonna take Virginia Tech plus the 3 here, Mike. I'm gonna take them outright because this is one of those games in my mind where, as much as we think we can make any damn sense of the Coastal Division, we can't. And this is one of those games to me that just sticks out like, by all means, Pitt at 4-1 in conference somehow should probably win this game, but they won't.
Appreciate the vote of confidence, Bay.
I basically just don't have confidence in the Coastal Division to behave at this point. It's not really working. So give me Virginia Tech plus the 3. I don't have a lot of analysis on why. I think Virginia Tech's due a little bit, and that's the best I got. Hokies plus the 3. Let's move on. 7 o'clock, ESPN 2. Miami on the road in Atlanta, taking on my Georgia Tech Yellow Jackets. The Jackets 3.5-point home favorite in a game that S&P Plus favors Miami by like 10 points or something like that. So that's going great. But Miami is on a 3-game losing streak, and they've looked like trash. Basically, they've scored 39 points over three games. That's not really encouraging. Quarterback situation's a thing, and all sorts of questions right now about Mark Richt and his longevity. Georgia Tech, by the way, has won like 4 of their last 5 games. So at this point, I'm taking Miami because, again, nothing makes sense, and I'm not allowed to have nice things. And I'm just going to take the Canes plus 3.5 in hell. Just take them outright because, again, nothing makes sense this year. And if nothing else, I am emotionally hedging because if Georgia Tech wins this game, I'm at least going to get a push on my season win total bet. So that's good enough for me.
I think that this game is the race to 20 points, and I think Georgia Tech gets there first. I got Georgia Tech beating Miami here.
To be fair, I mean, Georgia Tech had this game won last year in Miami before they got some stupid fluke bounces and such. So that's on the table. I mean, it can happen. And
Get back game, baby. Get back game.
I hope. Dan, are you trusting my Yellow Jackets or Cam's Hurricanes in this game?
I'm all over the Yellow Jackets because I'm all in on triple option. I love the fact, by the way, that they attempted approximately 1 pass against Virginia Tech and it was incomplete.
Yeah,
I rolled up like 465 rushing yards. Yeah, it was okay. It went okay.
Jeff Monken at Army once said, "How many passes did we attempt in this game?" And someone looked at him and said, "None. Can we throw less? I want to throw less than that." I love, you know me though, I love triple option. But here's my thing about Miami. Right. And I've said this. I've said this before. I don't love, and I've never loved this, when you pull a quarterback and you put in, and I know I've said this about a bunch of teams and a bunch of players. When you pull a quarterback, I think I said this most recently about Buffalo, the Bills. You can't go back. You have to eat that. You
stick with it.
You have to stick with it. You can't do anything else other than that. Because the minute you pull the other quarterback for the second one for your first quarterback again, you've now thrown the offensive game plan can't develop and move forward. Your unit has to move forward through fluid continuity. And what you can't have that when you pull a quarterback and then pull. Now, if a guy gets hurt, it kind of makes your decision easier, right? But I've never liked that move. It's hard for me to criticize Mark Richt because I've always liked him as a coach. But N'Kosi Perry played against Virginia, got pulled pretty quick hook from Malik Rozier. Rozier played against Boston College. I don't know who played against Duke, but you've said you're running into problems with 3 games left that you've got to make a decision and commit to it.
That was the thing I was going to bring up. You're talking about you can't go back, and I totally agree with that, with the exception of the injury thing that you brought up. Is if there is an injury, you can go back, but Miami has been so aggressively just flip-flopping on these guys, and I've started hearing the name Jaron Williams, the blue-chip true freshman quarterback out of Central Gwinnett here in Atlanta. Like, dude, if you're going to your next quarterback, that had damn well better work, because there is certainly no going back to the first or the second string guy if you're bringing in the freshman third stringer.
And we had experience up there at BC during that 2015 season. You lost your starting quarterback against Florida State when Darius Wade got hurt, and they started rotating because nobody outright won the job. Troy Flutie and Jeff Smith, neither one of them outright won the job. I think Smith got hurt, and I think Flutie got hurt. You wound up on your true freshman walk-on quarterback who actually wound up not looking half bad, John Fadul. And then down the stretch, but when you were going back and forth, neither guy won the job because they were both in the same boat and you couldn't make a decision. And I just remember saying neither one of them is allowing Steve Adazio to make a decision on who should be playing quarterback, which led to the next year getting a 5th-year transfer. So if you're Miami and you've pulled and you've gone from the senior to the freshman, you really, I mean, you can go back. You are going back, but it makes it a lot harder to put in a guy, pull him, put in a guy, pull him. It just doesn't hurt. It just doesn't help.
Moral of the story, I have faith in Mike's team and not my own team. Mike has faith in my team and not his own team. And just, damn it, Miami, figure out your damn quarterback situation. Get it right.
Seems like a good summary.
Shouldn't be hard. Okay, moving on. 7:30 p.m. on NBC. The Florida State Seminoles, a 17.5-point road dog in South Bend against the number 4 Notre Dame Fighting Irish. This is the game that I really don't want to pick. Like 17.5 points on the road. Florida State, what are they? Notre Dame, what are they? I do not know what to expect in this game whatsoever. Mike, you're the Notre Dame fan. Please help make some sense of this for me.
Notre Dame's a playoff team. They have one of the best defenses in college football. Florida State has trouble moving the ball. They're in South Bend. They're going to die. Notre Dame by 28 to 24 points.
That was concise. I like it. Let's look at, is DeAndre Francois going to play in this game? He maintains that he's still the starter for the Seminoles. That's a strange thing to say.
That's cute.
Yeah, he didn't play at all last week against NC State, and that's a whole thing. Should be playing in this game, I suppose. Notre Dame has been a little bit quieter lately, I guess. They kind of squeaked out a 10-point win over Northwestern last week, and ho-hum win over Navy the week before. I guess what the hell? Let's just take Notre Dame at home, coming home after a few weeks on the road. Florida State probably starting to pack it in at this point. I don't think they've got what it takes to go on the road and pull an upset. So 17.5 sounds like a lot, but Dan, I think I'm just going to go ahead and lay those points with the Irish.
If I ever say that Notre Dame's going to lose a game, I got a buddy of mine who is actually one of my old broadcast partners in college hockey. He's doing a year of grad school at Notre Dame. He texts me weekly he was just out at Northwestern. If I ever pick against Notre Dame under any circumstances, I have a feeling that he's going to drive from South Bend to Boston, slap me upside the head, get back in the car, and drive back to South Bend. So Irish will win.
There you go. That's important.
That's important.
All right.
Scientific.
Only noon slot game of the day. I don't know if I said that right, but oh well. The North Carolina Tar Heels on the road in Durham taking on the Duke Blue Devils. A 10.5-point favorite is Duke at, again, 12:20 p.m. on the ACC Network Extra. Mike, 10.5, that is way too many points for Duke to be laying at this point. Give me the Tar Heels plus the 10.5. They're due. This is a rivalry game, so throw the records out. And I don't see Duke running away and hiding with this game just yet. I mean, they have not really been all that inspiring lately.
I also like North Carolina to win because they're due and because Duke is still getting a lot of love, and I really don't understand it. Give me North Carolina 10.5. Holy cow, that's a lot of points.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is borderline up there with the best bet. 58 also sounds like a lot of points in any game involving Duke right now, so you might consider the under here. I don't know if I'm going to take North Carolina straight up. They seem pretty snake bitten, pretty unable to actually end up with a game where they have more points than their opponent. But can they make it close, make it competitive? I think they can. So yeah, Tar Heels plus the 10.5. Daniel, are you riding with Daniel Jones or with whatever Larry Fedora is going to throw out there on offense and defense for the Tar Heels?
I don't know. I'm going to hate myself for saying this. I've been saying North Carolina for a while that they were. What does it go back? What was the year that they scored? That they averaged like 44 points a game, but gave up like 47 points a game. And I have been just waiting for their breakout since, and I've been waiting for them to say this is it. This is North Carolina. This is where they start the road back. So naturally, I'm going to say I think Duke's probably going to win this game. Because in true fashion, that means North Carolina is probably going to win by about 65 points. It's like Villanova in basketball. And every year in March Madness, I pick Villanova to go deep, and every year they're out by the Sweet 16, except for the one year when I say I'm not letting them do it to me again. I picked them out in the second round, and they win the national title. So I'm going to say North Carolina. This is the game they're going to show me that they are on the way back.
I like it. Last one, guys. 3:00 p.m. on the ACC Network Extra. Our hashtag 25 Virginia Cavaliers. Welcome in the Liberty. What are they, the Flames? Yeah, the Flames. They're coming in. Now, here's the thing. Virginia laying 23.5 points at home. Virginia been pretty good this year in a lot of cases. Liberty, let me give you kind of the story of Liberty's season so far. They drubbed a bad Old Dominion team. They got drubbed by a decidedly average Army team. Got drubbed by North Texas. Beat New Mexico by 9. And in their last 4 games, they have played 1-score games against New Mexico State, loss. Troy, win somehow. Idaho State, and a loss to UMass last week. They lost in overtime, 62-59 to UMass. Now, is this a team that we expect to keep a game with Virginia within 23.5 points? My answer is no, it is not. Not at all. Virginia, what they aren't. Don't really worry about that for now. They're going to beat Liberty by at least 23.5 points. So, yeah, let's just lay the points there and not worry about it anymore.
Also laying the points, yeah. Virginia, that was ugly against Pittsburgh. Come on. What are you doing? But with that being said, Liberty's pretty bad. They have some decent qualities, I guess. They have a couple good players. Overall, they're pretty bad. I like Virginia to win this game, and I'll lay the points there as well.
I had a remark back when BC played UMass earlier in the year and they played Holy Cross, which is that if you want to be a 9-win team, and I think I might have said it to you guys, if you want to be a 9-win team, you don't lose games against FBS teams that are in either Conference USA or those games. You can't do it and be expected to win 8 or 9 games and contend for a division championship. So it's totally reasonable statement to say that Virginia needs to handle Liberty, get through the game, and just move on. Though that game last week, I know that it went triple overtime. That was actually a really fun game to watch. And if Liberty is investing the way that I think they are in their football program, and I know it's a very heavily religious ecumenical school, so if they're taking the time to invest in their athletics the way Brigham Young did, then they're going to be able to put something together. And I think they're going to be a program to be reckoned with at some point, but not now. And if you're Virginia and you're in the hunt for a Coastal Division championship, you can't go out and lose this game.
Yeah, definitely not. Just lay the 23.5 and let's get the hell out of here. I got nothing else. Okay. That wraps up all the ACC action we've got this week. Now, Mike, here's the thing that we kind of just totally forgot to hit on throughout the week, throughout the preview here. We got picks of the week we got to hit on, and you are a lot more confident in the one that you're going to go for here than I am. I'll let you kind of hit on your pick of the week first if you want to here.
Yeah, my pick of the week here, and I didn't call it out, as is tradition. I got Syracuse covering 3 touchdowns against Louisville. Louisville stinks.
Louisville does stink. They're not good. That's a good pick of the week. I'm kind of torn, and I mentioned a couple of options to you before the podcast, but I think there's another one that I'm actually more intrigued by at this point. I'm trying to decide. I need your help, both of you guys. Do you prefer Louisville and Syracuse to go over a nice 69 points, or do you prefer NC State laying 17 points at home against Wake Forest on Thursday night? Discuss.
NC State.
That's kind of what I'm thinking. Dan?
I have no idea.
Such an opinionated guest you are, Dan.
Hot takes everywhere.
Yeah, what the hell? NC State minus 17. I'm going to regret that. But, yeah, picks of the week. Mike laying 21 points with Syracuse. I am laying 17 with NC State. That's all we got. Dan, this has been fun. Thank you so much for joining us. It's always a pleasure having you on the program. This is, I think you're on the leaderboard. You're top of the leaderboard right now in basketball conference guest appearances. So thank you once again for joining. Good luck to your Eagles on Saturday as they host the War Machine Clemson Tigers. Enjoy College Game Day to your fan base. And would you like to tell the folks out there on the internet where they can find your work?
Yeah. Head over on Twitter at BC Dan Rubin, at Dan Rubin 12. My 2 accounts, BC Dan Rubin predominantly for the BC stuff. Also BCEagles.com. Anything that's under Eagles Unlimited, which is under the team section. It's a section that I do feature writing for, the athletic department direct. Work with a ton of great staff over there. And the teams are fantastic. Just got through the beginning of basketball season, or the beginning of some of the basketball coverage, and of course football has been cruising right along. So there's like I always say, and I know I say it every single time I'm on here, there's fantastic stories, there's great athletes, there's great student athletes, there's great people that are just waiting to have some of their stories told. And luckily I've been able to work with them and get some of those stories out there. So it has been a journey and a pleasure. And but all of that, I think, is going to be riding with us in lightning fashion going into Saturday. The week is flying by, but it feels like it's dragging. It's incredible. The energy's there, but I just want to make it to Saturday. and see what happens.
Well, once again, if you guys are not following him and you're looking for great Boston College coverage, you are really missing out. That's BCEagles.com, Eagles Unlimited. Mr. Dan Rubin, always a pleasure having you on. Thank you so much for joining. Please come back sometime soon. You are always, always welcome on the Basketball Conference podcast.
Pleasure.
All right, Mike. We got to wrap this up. We got to get out of here. We got to go check out actually how these games turn out. In the meantime, we're going to come back and recap these games this weekend, by the way. But in the meantime, you can find us on Twitter. I am at FTRS Joey. He is at Mike McDaniel CFB. And together we're at BC Podcast ACC. And once again, he is Mr. Dan Rubin. You can follow him at Dan Rubin 12 on Twitter. Would highly recommend that for any Boston College coverage you're looking for, or just, takes or that kind of thing, whatever he does. You can find us on iTunes, Google Play, SoundCloud, the Overcast app, wherever fine podcasts are sold for free. And they can send us an email with questions, comments, concerns. The longest email address known to man, basketballconferencepodcast@gmail.com.
Nailed it.
Yes, sir. Mike, you want to hit them with where they can find us on the social medias?
Yeah, facebook.com/basketball conference. Rate, review, find all of our podcasts there. And Joey, if I may, I have some breaking news.
Uh-oh, hit me.
The new college football playoff rankings are out.
Woo!
Boston College, number 17.
Mm-hmm.
NC State, number 14.
Oh, my gosh.
As predicted on our recap show, Joey, the Syracuse Orange are number 13 in the newest playoff poll.
Hold on. What?
They are now ranked higher than the basketball team. And number 2 is Clemson, by the way. Number 2 is Clemson.
Syracuse is 4-8 the last 2 years, and they're number 13 in the rankings.
Yep. Welcome to 2018. Top 4, Bama, Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, Georgia, Oklahoma, and a little bit surprisingly, LSU only fell to 7. So they're still in the mix. Keep an eye on that. They're barely in the mix, but they still have a pulse.
What a year. What a year. That's all I got. That's it. That's all I know. Okay, well, we probably need to talk about that on Sunday when we come back. But again, Mike, you got to get healthy. You're playing hurt right here, and you have gutted this one out, and I'm really proud of you.
Yeah, thanks. I was not as talkative as usual. Really appreciate you guys picking up the slack.
Well, I appreciate Dan picking up our slack because
yeah,
Mike's a warrior. Mike's a warrior.
in a matter of speaking, yes.
I think you mean a matter of speaking, but
a matter of speaking.
I'm not doing the damn Boston thing right now. We're not doing it.
You got to drop the G off that too. It's matter of speaking.
Speaking, yeah. There you go.
We're talking about it. Actually, that was more New York. Never mind.
Gosh. All right. We got to get out of here. We're gonna go watch these games. Mike, you want to come back and recap these games on Sunday?
I do. Hopefully, I'm a little healthier.
Yeah, hopefully. Hey, Dan, thanks again for coming on, and we'd love to have you back again sometime soon.
Love you guys.
Yep. We'll come back on Sunday and recap these games. And until next time, for Mr. Mike McDaniel and Mr. Daniel Rubin, I am Joey Weaver. Thank you guys so much for listening. We'll talk to you again soon. And until next time, go ACC.